Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
NBC News has now learned that today Donald Trump will be speaking with Ukrainian President Zelensky. This is notable for obvious two reasons. Number one, it was 5 years ago, I should say, that Donald Trump had that infamous phone call with the Ukrainian president in which he implied that U.S. support to Ukraine could be held up if Zelensky did not agree to have his administration investigate the Biden family. And of course, that led to Donald Trump's impeachment in the U.S. House. And I think the second part of the obvious implications of this is the fact that Donald Trump could very well win the presidency in November and take over the White House on January 20th. And there is no indication at this time that Russia's military operation will cease in Ukraine. And Donald Trump has openly questioned whether financial aid should continue to go to Ukraine. J.D. Vance has explicitly suggested that he does not care what happens to Ukraine and that financial aid should cease to the country from the United States. And of course, Donald Trump has become a close ally of Viktor Orban, who really has been a key critic of expanding NATO and continuing for the EU to provide assistance to Ukraine financially. So there is a lot on the line for Zelensky and Ukraine, understanding if a second Trump administration were to come into power. And so clearly these two individuals, these two men, are jumping on the phone here with still 3 months until the general election, understanding the major implications that Trump presidency could bring to the region.
Indicators. Peace in Ukraine is still possible even as the world is on the brink of total war. Welcome to More War Mondays, and the Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, and unfortunately we're not live on X Spaces with our simulcast today due to Hurricane Debbie has forced my host, Shell, to evacuate. So keep her and your family in your prayers with the intent of keeping them safe and that we get through this fairly quickly here. Well, we woke up to the loud beat of war drums coming from the Middle East as they've been building for months now, and involving heavy activity from the Russian Air Force conducting many flights into Tehran, and what's proven to be a really bad day for the stock market. But can we still have hope for peace in the Ukraine? That's one of the questions I've got. The indicators are yes. President Trump, now the official GOP nominee and still leading in the polls, despite the replacement of the addled Joe Biden with his Vice President Kamala Harris without a primary vote, has long said he could end the Ukraine-Russia war in a day once he's elected. Well, it turns out his most recent phone call, which you heard about there just before it happened, to the Ukrainian president just weeks ago, has stirred up buzz and activity that show Russia and Ukraine may be serious about peace again. Much has changed in the last few months, with Hungary ascending to the European Union presidency, having advocated for a peace plan for quite some time. But the Ukrainian armed forces have received their first F-16 aircraft in the meantime. All of this is influencing what is possible in both directions. Well, my guest today is the author of a recent article that got me to take a look at this. The specter of President Donald Trump has peace breaking out in Ukraine. L. Todd Wood is a special operations pilot, a U.S. Air Force Academy graduate. He flew missions for SEAL Team 6 and the Delta Force, and is now the CEO of CD Media. He's on a new mission. He wants to protect the American way of life and rescue it from the destructive hands of the socialist ideology that threatens our sovereignty and everything that makes this country great. Todd, Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, man.
Rob, thanks for having me back, man. I really appreciate it. Sorry, I'm traveling on the road, but I had to get on your show. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you taking this hour to spend with us, and hopefully you're traveling to somewhere good, because you always go to very interesting places, and more importantly, come up with great stories that the regular media just doesn't cover for whatever reason. I think it's nefarious. They don't want the American people to know the truth, you know. So the title of your article caught my attention, because it doesn't matter whether Trump thinks he can end it or not. It doesn't really matter what NATO and the American executive branch bureaucracy says, or even what Hungary says. What really matters is Zelensky serious about peace again, and is Russia willing to accept it? And I think the article lays out, in the context of that phone call, what the art of the possible is. You know, one of the things I wanted to lead off, though, and the reason I know that clip is that because it's so opposed to peace in the Ukraine. And these are the same people that are going on and on and on about making Israel get to a ceasefire mode against an enemy that killed babies and women and raped in public and all that. But they just don't want to have peace in the Ukraine, and hundreds of thousands of people are dying. Why do they oppose it so much?
Well, I think the issue in Ukraine is, and you're right, the phone call with Trump was highly significant. And in addition, you have Kellyanne Conway, who's been brought on by the Trump campaign to try to, not the Trump campaign, excuse me, the Zelensky government, to try to influence whatever Trump government is coming, right? So you have a very transactional regime in Kiev, and they smell what is happening, which could be a Trump presidency and peace in the region. So you have them now throwing Soros and the oligarch Pinchuk money at Kellyanne Conway and anybody else who can influence Trump, and they're trying to gain influence after a long period of being controlled by the Biden. So I think they just smell a change coming and are trying to make the best for themselves, and probably looking for an exit to Monaco or wherever they can get to enjoy their billions they've moved offshore, and trying to get some confirmation that they'll allow that to happen. So I do believe there is peace in Ukraine that is possible. I think it has to be negotiated. I think Russia wants peace. They want what they want, but I don't think they want a lot more, because running Ukraine is extremely expensive for them. And I don't think that they want to control that territory from a sovereignty standpoint. They want it to be neutral. And I think a neutral Ukraine would be best for everyone. And we just have to find the way forward, the arrow or the needle in the haystack to get to that point.
Yeah, the president, President Trump, I mean, he's said it many times. I could end it in a day, and it's part of his Agenda 47, and we'll hear a short clip from him in the next segment, at the beginning of the next segment, about that. But NATO and the unelected bureaucracy, I mean, I don't care what you say about Joe Biden, that's who's controlling where the United States and the West are on this issue. Do you see them, any indications from them that they're moving towards agreeing with Zelensky if he does come out and say, look, it's time to sue for peace. We've got what we've got?
No, I don't. I think the opposite. I think they're digging in to try and prevent any kind of peace from happening in Ukraine. And that's a shame, obviously, but I don't know if they're going to have a choice. So to them, the whole game at this point is to prevent Trump from getting in the White House and achieving that effect. I mean, you've seen Congress go in and try to prevent Trump from coming in and stopping aid to Ukraine. You've seen NATO looking to build forces along the line and put in place vehicles that will ensure that these funding mechanisms will continue to work in Ukraine, even if Trump gets in for a period of time. I mean, first they're going to try to stop him from getting in office, and then if he does get in, they're going to try to prevent any adverse consequences to their agenda, which is to use Ukraine as a criminal playground, as a money laundering vehicle. You remember, a lot of that aid that is going there is getting recycled back in highly likely to a lot of this Act Blue Smurf money laundering you're seeing into the political campaigns and into politicians' pockets. So no, I don't see any effort by the matrix in the West, the globalist, oligarchy, to try and achieve peace in Ukraine. I think just the opposite. So it's a showdown at this point.
So you mentioned Kellyanne Conway and her FARA
Mm-hmm.
filing, Foreign Agents Registration Act is what FARA means, and she's getting like 50 grand a month. Is that if I have that correctly, 50,000 a month of our tax dollars, because they only have our tax dollars. I don't think they're generating any organic revenue anymore in Ukraine. What is the significance of that from the fact that, yes, it's Kellyanne Conway. Do they really think she has that much influence over Donald Trump?
I just don't think they understand, right? I think these are crude creatures, some of them in the Zelensky regime. And although they may be sophisticated on how to set up money laundering carousels through their central bank or whatever, I don't think they really understand, American politics to that level that they can pick out who is the best insight into the Trump regime. In fact, a lot of people, there's really not a lot of, transparency into who can influence Donald Trump, right? Even from in our country. So I think they're just trying anything, throwing the money around and seeing who will grab it. And to them, 50,000 a month is nothing. And again, you're right; it's coming from us. So they'll just print more, and it's no big deal. And this is why this is all tied to. And you mentioned the financial issues happening today, because this is the destruction of a financial system that enables exactly what we're talking about, right? So you have a carousel of money laundering, printing money to fund nefarious agendas, to fund wars, and then that money gets recycled back in to keep it going. And if the collapse of our markets today could very well be signaling a new financial system that could take its place, and we could talk about that for a whole nother hour. But I think the system that has enabled what we have so far is cracking at this point.
Yeah, I think I'm watching the stock market pretty closely, like everybody else is today, Todd. And it seems like the algorithms that they put in place as brakes, emergency brakes, might be at least tamping it down for today. We'll see what happens in the next couple hours to less than 3% losses, maybe. But it was pretty devastating looking at what was happening. I think the Japanese market was down 12% by the time I woke up this morning, and that's pretty damn. Pardon my French, but that's pretty dramatic right there. And you're right. I mean, our financial system could be certainly on its way down to a downfall. Well, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk to you, just get your thoughts based on the context, the deep level of knowledge of context that you have about the Ukrainians themselves and the Russian part of this. Over there, get your thoughts on President Trump's comments on ending this war, because a lot of people don't think he can do it. I, for one, do think he can do it as somebody that's been in national security for most of my adult life. And I think he's got some probably good ideas that he's not revealed yet. I'll be interested to get your thoughts on it. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show here on Worldview Tube with Todd Wood, the CEO of CD Media.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine In Peru, it's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com.
So I spoke yesterday, as you know, President Zelensky called me, and we had a good talk. And I said, we got to get this war over. This is a war machine. You're facing a war machine. That's what they do, is they fight wars. They beat Hitler. They beat Napoleon. They're fighting a war. And the spring offensive never happened. And I hear they had millions of mines put down, and they had thousands of army tanks, meaning the Russians.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday. We're back to our standard war type operation now instead of the war against the American people we've covered the last few weeks. And my guest today is the CEO of CD Media, Todd Wood, who has reporters on the ground in Ukraine. Very few media operations, either corporate or independent, have actual reporters on the ground in Ukraine that have deep knowledge happening with not only the war over there, but the politics of the region, the relationship Russia has to the region and everything. So this information and this reporting is probably the most reliable that you're going to get. We need to get it out. Help us share the show. The show's being broadcast to X Live right now, just like it is every day. Get out there and share that thing. I know our X Spaces audience is not with us today, but those of you that are members of that audience, please share this every single day, the live stream and the X Space, and go to our pages at Worldview Tube, on Rumble, and at the website, and share these shows, because this information is critical to get to the American people as we come up on this election here on November 5th in 2024. Well, Todd, the president there, that was right after the phone call. He's sitting there with his vice presidential nominee named at the time. So that was a couple of weeks ago, at the outside, and I think he can do it. I think his phone call, as you wrote in your article, has generated a lot of things that we're hearing and seeing now. And you mentioned a couple things in the article that surprised me. One of them was the mayor of Kiev, who I think is pretty close to Zelensky, talking openly about a peace deal. Did you find that as one of the things that was unusual as the outcome of this? Check your mute button.
Sorry, guys, I had the mic off. My apologies. Klitschko, who you're talking about, is the boxer who is the mayor of Kiev. He's obviously corrupt, as is every politician over there. And the fact that he's talking about this is important because it means that he's angling for power. He senses Zelensky is weak and is trying to find a way to rather front run him or look for a way to push him out and either access his money laundering billions or the machine that he has to launder the money. You got to realize everybody over there who's in power is always looking for more of the pie. And that is the only thing that drives them, not peace, not world affairs, just more of the pie, more billions that they can buy more homes offshore and send it offshore. And so that is what Klitschko is doing, and that's the significance of that. But it's important because it shows that Zelensky is weak.
Yeah, he is weak. As a matter of fact, you also mentioned that an Atlantic Council member was calling for him to organize a unity government, so to maybe provide a cushion for some of these unpopular decisions that they need to make, like full mobilization, which they're not going to get there. I mean, people will leave and are leaving in much greater numbers than would enable them to get there. And I think the average age, some reporting I also saw, average age of a person on the battlefield now is about 45, which is up 5 years from just 6 months ago or so. Is that accurate?
Yeah, well, I don't know the exact age, but you're right. The age is rising because most of the young, able soldiers have been killed or maimed. And so they're ravaging the countryside, trying to find people. This is an attrition war. Russia has 160 million people. Ukraine started with 42. It's down to about 20-ish. So most of those people have left. A lot have died. The people are trying to leave. The men are trying to leave, but they're killing them on the borders. The border guards are. If you remember the movie Cold Mountain, where the Confederate border guards were killing any, deserters while the front was raging. I mean, it's a very similar situation right now in Ukraine, and they're recruiting women. They're recruiting people with disabilities. One eye's fine, go fight. One arm's fight, go fight. And the average time on the front is very low. And yes, the old men are being forced to fight. It's really a sad situation, and I find it disgusting that our senior military leadership often makes comments, well, this is good for us because we're weakening the Russian military. Well, tell that to the mother of the dead Ukrainian soldier. I find that abhorrent, to be honest, and I think this war needs to end. We need to find peace. If you look at it, are they a threat to Europe? Right now they're struggling to take Donbass. Are they a conventional threat to Europe? I don't think so. Conventionally, nuclear, yeah, they have a nuclear force that could destroy the world, but conventionally, I'm not sure Putin wants to take on NATO at this point. I think he just wants a neutral Ukraine, and that was his red line, and we crossed it. And so there is a peace deal on the table that was signed in 2016. It just needs to be implemented. It never was implemented on either side. So the peace is there. It just there has to be incentives, Rob, on either side to make it work. And the incentive for Zelensky is, well, you're going to lose power and maybe be deposed unless you find a way to make peace, which is the deal, I think, that the offer that he couldn't refuse that Trump gave him.
Yeah, so the three little breakaway republics, I think they're called republics now in the south and eastern part of the country, pretty much Russia has occupied most of that territory. They've retaken what little bit they had to give up when they retreated after the initial, what I call the shock and awe phase. I mean, so really, I mean, their goal is to have those territories, they're Russian speaking for the most part. Am I correct on that? That their goal is to have that demilitarized and neutral?
Yes, they're Russian speaking, but everybody pretty much speaks Russian in Ukraine. But they are more, I guess, I don't want to say ethnically Russian, but more tied to the Russian culture than the new Western Ukrainian culture that has been built. You're talking about Luhansk, Donetsk, and Crimea, I believe, are the three areas you're talking about. So, but yes, they are more Russian-oriented and was much easier to absorb, and that's why Putin wanted them. They're actually Russian citizens now and use Russian passports, money, everything in those regions.
Yeah, when they had votes eventually about stay or leave, is there any reliability with that voting that you can see, or is it just more of the same? I mean, even here in this country, the average citizen, I don't think, has much confidence in our voting systems.
I don't know if the results of the vote were correct. I believe that those people probably would be happier in the Russian sphere because there's a reason for that, because they were being ethnically cleansed by a lot of the Azov and nationalist Ukrainian battalions before this whole thing kicked off, right? I mean, that's why this kicked off, because in 2014, this war has been going on for 10 years. Most people don't realize that. Yeah. And, there were 10,000 dead before the 22 invasion, at least. And there were, and I know, and I've had reporters inside Donetsk, there was ethnic cleansing against, Russian-oriented people in that region. They would come in and, like a pogrom in the old Jewish Soviet Union. So they do feel better under the Russian, not all of them, but a good majority in those areas.
Yeah. So what do you think Trump's move is going to be, based on your understanding of the conflict itself? What incentivizes Vladimir Putin to come back to the table? I mean, I know they've said it, but
I think it's a carrot and a stick approach. I think he'll say, okay, sanctions will go away, which is huge. Although the sanctions have not worked out the way the West wanted them, they are painful in some ways to Russia. They have, however, forced them into the arms of China and elsewhere. And I'm not so sure Russia wants to be in the arms of China. I don't, they say they're all, BFFs right now, but China wants Russia too. And I think Putin knows that. They want Siberia, they want those lands, they want the resources. And Putin doesn't quite totally trust, Xi Jinping. And so I think he would like options. And I think there's a deal to be made, right? We turn off sanctions, you end the war, we draw a border, Western Ukraine becomes neutral. It's something like that in that, sphere that is going to make Putin say, okay, deal done. And we have to just, on the Ukrainian side, say, look, the war's over. Get used to it. Find some peace. We'll protect Kiev. We'll find some kind of security arrangement for Western Ukraine. But the war is going to end, and it should, because this is what it's done to Ukraine. It's destroyed Ukraine. For who? It's for the globalist corporations. BlackRock and all these other companies are coming in and buying up land for their agricultural machines, or their agricultural production machine, and it's destroyed Ukraine. The people are maimed or dead or left. The population's depleted. The cities are destroyed. The currency is destroyed. That you're right. There is no organic revenue generation whatsoever. So, this is not something Putin wants to take and have to pay for. He just wants a buffer zone, in my opinion.
Yeah, and those three republics, they give a good buffer zone, and then if the rest of the country is neutral, and I think the West has got to pony up to help rebuild. I mean, we broke it pretty much on the Western side, but the challenge is, I think, Todd, let me know if you agree with this, is that Putin's got to be able to accept that as part of a peace agreement, and I'm not sure how they set that table for him to be able to accept that the West has got to be in there to fix it.
I think that's a needle that can be threaded. That's economics. You mean fix Western Ukraine? Well,
yeah.
I mean, you look at Congress and all the globalist corporations; they're slobbering at the mouth to get into there to do that. I mean, they had this thing called land reform, which essentially gave all the peasant land to the corporations. That was the land reform, before this war kicked off. And so they've been planning what to do with Ukraine for a long time. This is why they're fighting so hard to keep control of it. Not to mention all the trafficking and organized crime and money laundering and everything else, drug production that's going on there. It's just been a really good thing for the globalists to have a lawless nation that they could do whatever they want, like launch operations against American political candidates, hacking operations, information operations. All of that came out of Ukraine against Bernie Sanders, against Donald Trump, against anyone threatening the matrix.
Now, wait a minute. I thought that was Russians.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, they bought. Look, let me just be clear. I'm not a fan of Vladimir Putin. I know what he's done to the Russian middle class. He's killed journalists. He's killed prisoners, political prisoners. I mean, I'm not. Support for ending the war does not have to be support for Vladimir Putin. But I tell people, you don't have to agree with him, but you have to understand him in order to find a way to end the war, which is good for everyone.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, you got to remember that Vladimir is a retired KGB colonel, which means he was all in on communism, all in on the Soviet Union, all in on that stuff. So he thinks through that lens. You could see it in his interviews. He's very bureaucratic, speaks like a government technocrat, and solves problems that way too. So I think, and you don't have to love him. I don't love him. I think he's done terrible things, and the prospect of a free Russia that we had at the end of the Cold War it's not dead, but it's certainly on life support unless we can get rid of that guy at some point, or he changes his mind on how to do business. We got to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk about the Ukrainians getting the F-16s now. They're getting deliveries. They've got crews trained for the SEAD mission, that's suppression of enemy air defenses missions, and whether that impacts the ability to get to a peace deal. With Todd Wood, the CEO of CD Media, a media that you can trust because they have people on the ground actually reporting on the facts. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show at Worldview 2.
We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live at a time when our own governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. Worldviewtalk.com. You'll also find they have, well, what I now have, which is a solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com.
The Hungarian Prime Minister traveled to Kiev to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Bertalan Havasi, the Prime Minister's press chief, said on Tuesday morning that the most important topic of the meeting was the possibility of peace. He said Viktor Orban and Volodymyr Zelensky would also discuss current issues in Hungarian-Ukrainian bilateral relations. Under a photo posted on his Facebook page from Kiev, the Prime Minister wrote that the Hungarian presidency aims to contribute to solving the challenges facing the European Union. My first trip, therefore, took me to Kiev. In an interview with M1 and in Paris last week, before the EU presidency began, the Prime Minister said also that one of the main goals of the presidency is to achieve peace. Hungary does not care about Ukraine. It does not care about Russia. What Hungary cares about is peace. Hungary is not against Ukraine or against Russia. Hungary is against war. We want to stop the war, so for us, the most important goal is to have a ceasefire as soon as possible, with that to stop to die more people. Volodymyr Zelensky recently wrote on X that he congratulated Hungary on taking over the presidency of the European Union. He said that as it moves forward on its path towards the EU, Ukraine is ready to contribute to these efforts and strengthen Europe. The meeting between Viktor Orban and Volodymyr Zelensky was among the first reported by The Guardian. The British paper said that the talks were conditional on the issue of national minority rights being resolved. On this had been made an agreement in recent weeks. This will be announced as a success at the meeting, the London paper wrote.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we have a lot to talk about. And we're talking with Todd Wood, the CEO of CD Media, and former Special Ops helicopter pilot, Air Force Academy graduate, very well schooled in this part of the world, in Ukraine, Russia, Eastern Europe especially, has been there on the ground, has reporters on the ground there. And Todd, I wanted to bring Orban into this because he has just ascended to the EU presidency, and it's been known for a long time, as I said in my opening, that he's had a peace plan on the table. And one of the first things he did was go to Moscow to meet with Putin to open the door, and then after he took the presidency of the EU, his first visits to the Ukraine to talk to Zelensky, and I think that's a good thing. But what do the American people need to know about this? The EU presidency is not really that powerful, is it? But I think he's going to get some good media out of it.
Orban is a populist, along with a few others in Europe, not many. Europe is going through a serious challenge right now of leadership that is essentially allowing the destruction, in my view, of Europe as we know it. And Orban is fighting against that. The war in Ukraine is part of that process that he wants to end and stop the waste of resources. And Hungary is right there on the border. A war to them in Ukraine is much more serious thing than the French, although the French are saying they want to send troops. But the EU presidency is really a mask for a much bigger Marxist organization that wants to turn Europe into some type of tyranny. You've seen it with all the new laws coming out of Europe for censorship, for outlawing parties. You know, they're trying to outlaw the AfD in Germany, and they're raiding journalists' homes in Germany that say the wrong thing. You know, though it's not part of the EU, but the UK is having very similar issues. So I think Orban is against all that, sees that, doesn't want that to happen to Hungary, but still needs the EU money and what the EU can give Hungary. So he's walking a tightrope right now. I hope he's successful because I admire what he's doing.
As the president of the EU, what levers of power does he have, if any, to try to steer that ship away from this Marxist approach? Because I agree with you. I think they're trying to destroy Europe as we know it.
It's more of a performative function, but he can, you know, he has the bully pulpit, so he can make issues important. You know, Ursula von der Leyen, or however you say her name, is the one, you know, pulling the strings and actually running things over there for someone else, in my opinion. And she's a very, as Trump would say, she's a bad guy or a bad girl. And so Orban wants peace. There is a peace to be made. We're really at a critical junction, I think, in human history at this point, because if Europe fails and Trump doesn't get into office, you know, where are you going to go? I mean, there's really nowhere else at this point. And we're headed for, you know, 1,000 years of darkness. So this is a critical juncture. And I agree with you. Media is, and let me just say, media is critical. CDM.press is our main site. If your audience could put it in your daily scan, we'd really appreciate it. We have reporters all around the world. Tsarism is our Eastern European site, which is the one you're talking about. It was actually our first one. We cut our teeth in Ukraine. Little did I know in 2015 when we were building a team on the ground there, because I just thought that people needed to understand what was happening in Ukraine and Russia, that would be the center of the political universe a few years later. So it was very fortunate, you could say providential, but we've been telling the truth, and it's why we were severely deplatformed in 19 and 20, because we were saying what was going on in Ukraine with the Bidens and elsewhere.
Yeah, it's and there's a lot of threads to be pulled that they just don't want you to pull, Todd. And they'll do everything they can, because I think there's a connection, and you mentioned it briefly, between the EU approach tyranny effort and the UK. I'm assuming the UK censorship laws that they're using, even as we speak, they're going to use to try to get Tommy Robinson in prison again and hold him accountable for these Muslim gangs that are going around beating up people that oppose the open borders policy and are demonstrating to do that. That's what's happening. The prime minister is even saying they're far right thugs when they're just people, most of them, that are opposing the open border policy. And it's really really gone down a very, very dark pathway, quite honestly.
It's coming here too, Rob. I mean, what you're seeing in the UK, why do you think they brought 10 million fighting age men in the US? It's coming here, and that's what Americans need to realize. It's not just way off there anymore. It's going to be here when we start to oppose whatever they're doing.
Yeah, and, there are small groups that are opposing it, but not in the numbers that we're seeing in England today and in Europe too. You know, but so we see the movements of larger numbers of Russian aircraft into Tehran over the weekend, even up to today. It's still happening today if you look at the flight systems and everything. We see Iran insisting that they have to retaliate against Israel because they killed a Hamas leader on their territory, as if that Hamas leader was Iranian himself. And we see all of that activity, and the United States is now sending more troops, another amphibious group, another carrier, more fighters, B-52s on the news this morning. Back to the region, and all of that. What is the impact of all of that on this potential peace thing? Because I still think it's possible that you know, that we can be working on this peace deal while all of this other stuff is going on. But I'm just concerned because the Russians are so heavily involved now. What are the ins and outs of that?
This is, in my opinion, another push for a global war. It's another vector for that. And Iran, uh, the decapitation of multiple Iran or proxy armies of Iran, the decapitation of the leadership over a 48-hour period a few days ago in multiple countries, including Tehran, including Iran, the capital Tehran. The Hamas leader was killed by what looks like a short-range missile fired from another building to where he was sleeping, and the building it was hit was 150 yards, I am told, from the Iranian president himself at the time. So you have a situation where the Iranian regime is very weak. It is scared that it could be decapitated very easily as well with elements inside the country. And they're using this fact that it was not an outside force per se, although obviously there were intelligence agencies involved in country, but it wasn't a missile from outside the country that killed the Hamas leader. That has given them a little, because killing a leader inside the country puts them in a position where they have to respond militarily. And I think that the fact that it didn't come from outside the country gave them a little wiggle room to say, well, maybe we don't want to do this. And I think the Biden administration is sending a lot of U.S. troops and men and women and equipment to the region. And it's become very clear to the Iranians that this is probably a losing proposition. It looked like a few days ago that they were going to launch, I thought today, or at least they were signaling today, several thousand missiles into Israel. Hezbollah, and this is long-range stuff from Iran, and you have Hezbollah with hundreds of thousands to the north that can literally destroy Israeli cities. I mean, that's not a joke, and that's not a conspiracy. That is true, that can happen, and the Iron Dome can't prevent it. And it's just not, it would overwhelm the system, and a lot of Israelis would be killed. So I think that we're to the point where we're teetering on, does Iran respond or not? And the Iranian leadership knows if they do and it hurts Israel, they're probably going to be out of business, even personally, maybe. So I think that's the thought and the process and the decision-making process that's going on in Tehran as we speak.
Do you think the American people understand that, though? I mean, our media and government has built up the mullahs as this almost all-powerful, can reach out and touch at will, even here in our own country, type of entity. And I think you're right. I mean, they are. I know they're weak internally. We know that because we watch the situation. We read the reports coming out, and this delayed response. Here's another big indicator, as you said. Do you think the American people really understand that, though?
No, I don't. I think the American people are completely ignorant to what's happening. And again, why you and I are doing free media, for that very reason. I think we see opportunity commercially, but I think we're both doing it because we feel it's needed for the country. And I sure do. And no, I don't think the American people realize, yes, Iran has capabilities. I'm not saying they don't. Their proxy armies are there for a reason. They have built up a ring of fire around Israel. However, I'm of the opinion that someone wants a really big war, and I don't think the U.S. can withstand another really big war. And then we need to shrink back, take care of our southern border, take care of our internal issues so that our grandchildren can have a future. And a big war in the Middle East, which expends even more resources of ours, kills even more people, is not going to be good for us. So I think we need to, again, find a way to scale this down. But I'm not sure the powers that be want that, to be honest.
Yeah, I want to continue that discussion when we come to the last segment, and then this time I'll have the video of the F-16s going to Ukraine, and we can talk about the impact of that on a potential peace deal. But I think you're right. Somebody wants a wider war. I'm not quite sure who it is. I'm interested in your opinion on that. We'll be right back with Todd Wood, CD Media, here on More War Monday at Worldview Tube on the Rob Maness Show.
jets are in our sky, and officially today you see them, and it's good that they came and we can use them.
Ukrainian pilots will now be flying in US-made F-16s for operations within the country, said President Volodymyr Zelensky on Sunday. The long-awaited fighter jets arrived more than 29 months after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Zelensky said, however, the country still did not have enough jets or pilots. But he noted many soldiers are now undergoing training. It remains unclear how many jets Ukraine received and how much impact they will have on the battlefield. Kiev has long lobbied for the F-16s due to their destructive power and global availability. It currently has an aging fleet of Soviet-era warplanes.
We had hundreds of meetings and talks to strengthen the capabilities of our aviation, to strengthen the capabilities of our air defense system, of our defense forces. We often heard it is impossible as an answer, but we still made our ambition, our defensive need possible. Now this is reality, reality in our skies. F-16s are in Ukraine.
The new jets come equipped with a 20mm cannon and can carry bombs, rockets, and missiles. Russia has been targeting bases that may house the F-16s and vowed to shoot them down.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show here on Worldview Tube, and we are transmitting to all of our social media channels live right now, including X. So if you catch it there, please share it. And my guest today on More War Monday is Todd Wood, the CEO of CD Media, a former U.S. Air Force Special Operations helicopter pilot, Air Force Academy graduate. And I'm with you, Todd. You mentioned we're doing free media. I think we're doing freedom media. And I'm a volunteer just like you are. I make absolutely $0 out of this. I just get enough, but I get the production value from somebody, and I get a little bit of an allowance that helps me buy some stuff to go with it. But I feel like this is the defense, my continued defense of the American people. I really believe that. And without us, none of these facts and truth would be getting out anywhere, right?
That's so true, Rob. The reason that no one knew that the CIA killed Kennedy was because of the media. Now people are awake, I think, and becoming more awake, and that's because of free media, because we broke away from the legacy media and built organizations that can tell the truth. And it's kind of like blockchain, you know, it's so decentralized now. There's so many guys out there just putting out really good content, citizen journalists, that gets, you know, really spread around. And although they try to stop it, they try to deplatform us, they try to take away the advertisers. There's a lot of techniques that have worked, let's be honest, in a big way. Yep. But we're not dead. So in the media, somehow all this still gets out. And that's what I'm proud of, you know, and it's it is a freedom, you know, effort for sure in media. And I would encourage your audience, just don't give any money to these legacy channels. Don't give them any clicks, including Fox News. Don't turn it on and leave it on all night. You know, turn on Patriot TV or whatever, and just or us or whoever, and let's just go, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because the less we give them and the more we give our side, the more our information is going to overcome all the lies and narrative. Well, we saw the vaunted F-16s there flying over Ukraine. Well, we think they're definitely on the ramp there, at least models of them behind Zelensky. You never know these days, especially in this war, man. The propaganda and disinformation and influence operations. So I'll caveat everything. So they've supposedly taken their initial delivery for specifically, the reporting says, the SEED mission, or the suppression of enemy air defenses mission, which the F-16 has been modified for here in the United States and in allied countries. And what that means is that it's a mission designed to go after surface-to-air missile radars and the missiles themselves in order to enable one side to control the airspace or be able to operate in the airspace without getting shot down by those missiles and those radars. So that's supposedly the mission, and that makes sense. You know, the Ukrainians' Air Force got devastated, decimated, really, at the beginning of this whole thing, and they've been hanging on by a thread, I think, ever since then. So, what are your thoughts on this militarily, but also in the context of what we've been talking about, the potential peace deal maybe being on the horizon now that Donald Trump's come back into the fray?
I think this F-16 deal is just a money maker for somebody, and it's not going to make a big deal in country. Look at what the Abrams tanks did. They sent a few, multiple of them got destroyed, and then they got pulled off the battlefield because they weren't effective. The F-16 is 1970s technology, a great aircraft, you know, first aircraft that could turn faster than the human body could accept, and but you know, it's old technology, even if it's been modified. This is a ground war. It's not an air war, and it's a drone war actually. And this is new tactics, and it's being, you know, the troops on the field, large formations are being atomized in small elements so that they can survive, because it's 24/7. Either side can see everything. So even a soldier in a foxhole, they can take him out quickly. And I just don't think long-range aircraft, unless you're looking at bombing facilities deep inside Russia, are going to be that effective. I think you're seeing warfare change, and this is all throwing, you know, old technology at new problems, and I'm not sure it works. This is a ground war. Russia has many more people. They will win over time unless NATO gets fully involved, and even then, it's, you know, then you're talking World War III. So I don't think this is going to make that big of a difference.
Yeah, because let's just get beyond the airplanes themselves, and I think it's the best fighter aircraft, air fighter aircraft that's ever been built. To be honest with you, I don't think the F-22 can match it as far as its maneuverability and capability and everything.
Yeah.
But who am I? I'm just a backseater from B-1s. But you know, I do study fighter aircraft because they try to kill me.
So I'm sure all the fighter guys are pissed off. I'm a rotorhead. I don't go above, you know, 100 feet.
So yeah, you have to scare the ground away from your aircraft.
Exactly.
In order to get, so I'm sure they've got a lot to say about it, but I bet none of them are. The real fighter pilots will not argue with me when I said the F-16 is probably the best air-to-air combat aircraft
Sure.
devised by man, at least in the 20th century and probably this century so far. That'll change eventually, and I think it's going to change by what you just brought up. And I wasn't going to go there, but it's very important that the American people understand this UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, autonomous aerial vehicles, autonomous vehicles, even ground combat vehicles. We've seen the Russians try to use some that they've had in development in this fight. This war is changing warfare every minute, every day. You see the impact of it if you look closely at the footage of the Israeli tanks in Gaza. You see what's called a cope cage over the top of the hatches of the tanks, because these little UAVs they were using to drop small anti-tank munitions onto the tops of those tanks, the M1 Abrams you were talking about, and it caused them to be removed from the battlefield. You know,
Yeah.
And these drones are like, some of them are made of cardboard. The Australians developed one that's made of cardboard that they're selling to the Ukrainians. I mean, it's amazing in a way of human death. That type of amazing, what the change in warfare has occurred. And I don't think most of your average citizens, even those that make it a hobby of studying this stuff, really have a good understanding of what's happening. You mentioned that troops on the battlefield have been atomized. The units on the battlefield have been atomized. Why is that happening? What about these drone tactics is driving it?
Because any large formation, even down to a platoon level, can be seen immediately and tracked and destroyed immediately. So, I mean, people don't understand the scale of death in Ukraine. I mean, there's been 1 million dead, we think, on the Ukrainian side. I don't have good Russian numbers. There's estimates out there, but it's a lot. And thousands are dying on certain days on both sides. I mean, think about that. It's like civil war. It's like having Gettysburg, all over again every day. And it's horrific. And it's like the machine gun in World War One. There's scenes in movies where the Poles come up on their horses and the Germans just pull out their machine guns and wax them all. I mean, that's what's going on. So until you develop a technology that can counter that, F-16s aren't going to make a difference. They're up at 20,000 feet. And they can't get down in the drone war. They can bring a grenade over a foxhole and drop it on a guy. Have you seen those videos of, grenades dropping in the foxhole and guys pick them up and throw them out? And, from the drone.
Yeah. Or,
I mean, it's fascinating.
Or the drone, a guy's trying to get away from it, and the drone finally catches up to him and comes back and hovers like a bird, and fires the little device at him and gets him. It's really devastating, and all the more reason to get this war ended. Todd, thank you so much for coming on. Tell folks where they can find you and share CD Media's operations again before I let you go.
Yeah, cdm.press. cdm.press is our main site. Go there. All top menu, all of our sites globally are there. You can see from Miami to Montana to Eastern Europe to Central America or the Middle East or Asia. So you can see it all, and you get all of our content throughout the network. We do a lot of video work. CDTV is growing. We're putting out a lot of content, and it's unique. It's not, you were on my War Stories podcast a while back. Just unique content that you won't get elsewhere. And check out all our different sites. Put our social media. We're on X. We're on everywhere. We're not everywhere. We're kicked off Facebook and all those places. But any free media, we're there. So please follow us. Put us in your daily scan. I know people have a lot of different areas they look for news, but just make us one of them. That's all we ask.
Yep, we will. We'll push it on our audience and make sure they're aware of it, Todd. Appreciate the great work you guys are doing as part of this Freedom Media Network that is growing and really creating itself out of thin air due to the need for facts and truth getting to the American people.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate it. I enjoy your show. It's one of my faves. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Share ours too. We appreciate it because nobody's making millions of dollars off of this stuff, folks. And without you sharing it, the truth's not getting out. So CD Media over there with Todd Wood, Worldview Tube, my network that I'm on here. Thanks to Brandon House. We appreciate you sharing that. And we're all part of the Freedom Media Network. I just created that term in this show here on More War Monday. It's time to get up, move out, fight for that freedom every single day, and don't be demoralized. Keep up the hope because this is America and we're Americans. I'll see you tomorrow on Training Tuesday. We've got E. Brian Rose. He's an author of a new book called Cloning Donald Trump. It's a friend of mine from right here in South Mississippi. I'm looking forward to that. I've been wanting to have him on for a long time. I'll see you then.